Welcome to the Cal Park Bros podcast. I'm your host, Terrence, and with me is my co-host, Jason, calling in from the back cave in Indianapolis. Jason, how are you, my good man?
Hey, man, I'm doing real good this week. You know what it is? It's record time for the bros, episode 71. But once again, we ain't done for this episode 71. Got a couple good topics, doing something different with topic number 3. Stick around, check that out, folks. Let's get into it.
Right. Yes, sir. Thank you for listening to episode 71. As Jason has mentioned, Filling In Initiated Cal Park Bros is the podcast to hear. We are a weekly podcast for fans of sports, current events, and entertainment.
And as always, we are your hosts, Terrence and Jason, and every single Thursday, we come to you with a brand new episode where we discuss the current events of the day, sports, and the athletes we love.
And even some of the athletes we loathe. No matter the topic, you can expect a brutally honest and fun exchange of snark while learning through the lens of our 30 years of friendship that originated in Calumet Park, Illinois.
And folks, for more Cal Park Bros content, make sure you connect with us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, and TikTok under the handle Cal Park Bros or Cal Park Bros Podcast for more behind the scenes of the show and just to engage with us every single day. But as I always say, you cannot forget that the Cal Park Bros Podcast is available to listen and subscribe for free. No money, wherever you, your folks, your peoples, your neighbors down the street, listen to podcasts.
Like us, love us, share us, follow us. And folks, if you like us, hell, why wouldn't you?
And like Terrence always says, we are the podcast to hear and watch. So make sure you're living it, loving it, and doing it.
Yes, sir. First segment, we're talking about some back to school topics that, frankly, are top of mind for a lot of us. Those of us who have, kids, whether they're, middle school, kindergarten, or junior high, high school, and in some cases, your kid is going to college, and so it's back to school for a lot of folks right now. And Jason and I were discussing earlier this week. This is probably the first year, post-COVID, that it feels remotely normal, dare I say. In a lot of places, they're dropping vaccine mandates or masking mandates for kids in school. So that's why I say it feels normal-ish, right? But that doesn't mean that everything's back 100% to normal. There are still a ton of school districts, frankly, that are dealing with shortages. I know Chicago Public School, CPS, they're dealing with it. They're dealing with their own version of it. I know a big bone of contention, not necessarily in Chicago, but in Florida, where the shortage of teachers is so dire that the Florida governor decided to effectively change the requirements for teacher certification. And they're so shorthanded down there, Jason, that effectively they were allowing people with a military background and no degree, for example, to be able to obtain certification. So there was a big bone of contention with that. Clearly, if you're a teacher and you've honed that craft for, let's say 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, 20 years, like no one just comes out of college or even the military knowing how to do that job. And there was definitely some blowback in the endeavor to try and fulfill a need. The thing that I don't think that I liked, Jason, is that just because well-intentioned members of the community were saying, "Hey, I don't know if that's a good fit," the Florida governor, Ron DeSantis, was trying to say that basically that these people were anti-military. And I don't like the idea that just because someone raises an objective critique or a concern, that makes them anti-military. So, what are some of your thoughts about that particular tactic to use the military um, to effectively close the gap between the number of empty positions and trying to ensure some sort of continuity there in Florida specifically, but more generically everywhere.
A few things I want to point on and everything you just said. First off, can we really say that we're post COVID at this point? I mean, after all, this is technically the third school year that we're going into during the pandemic. The pandemic's not over. It's not Delta level by any means. But like you said, it's not like that anymore. Matching is not required in most places. Vaccines aren't required anymore in general. Um, Chicago public schools are still testing students, I believe, every week at the very least. So they're still doing that, which is probably a good idea. I believe they're also taking measures for monkeypox as well, because that is a thing. Not to say it's on the level of COVID, but it's still a thing. Regarding the whole Florida situation when it comes to the military, I mean, I'd say to you, and or anybody who has an issue with that, not saying you do, is that what's the difference in them doing that for the military versus what they allow for substitute teachers in their state? Because if I'm not mistaken, for the state of Florida, substitute teachers have to have at least a high school diploma, at least, or a GED technically. And if you have no classroom experience, the school district must provide you training on the classroom management skills and instructional strategies prior to allowing you to work in the classroom. So as DeSantis said, if he feels the Florida military already know how to run a tight ship, then that part's already taken care of, even if they don't have a high school diploma, which most military probably have that at least, or a GED. So I say to you individuals who have an issue with that, in Florida at least, keep that in mind. Now, when it comes to the alternative in general, Florida or otherwise, what's the alternative? Not to not have those extra leaders in the classroom, so not many classes. So you have to stuff 60 kids in the classroom just to get so they can learn. Is that good for the students? Is that good for the teachers? Now, folks, I always have to feel like I have to preface these type of subjects when I talk that I'm not a teacher, but I'm also not a parent. So I'm admitting that out there. So if anybody wants to say that and think it, I know that. I'm acknowledging that.
And he's also not volunteering in Florida either, so that's an important note too.
I live in Indiana, sir. I live in Indiana. So, but yeah, but now when it comes to DeSantis saying that those people are anti-military, I think that's just an exaggeration. I mean, even though he might have meant it, it's kind of hyperbolic in a way because it's like, bro, they're not anti-military. Just stop. However, that is another good aspect to that is if these are unemployed military personnel, then now they, at least for now, they have work. So maybe that's what DeSantis meant. Maybe this is helping the military. If you're against that, then you're anti-military. Blah 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 blah. But those are just a couple of the benefits of having those actual military personnel teaching in the classrooms. It benefits them and you and your kids. So I don't really see what the big deal about that's about. So
I was gonna say that one, I am curious what their training regimen looks like for substitute teachers to be successful. Uh, whether they were substitute teachers before COVID or it's military personnel basically being shoehorned into this. I think just because you can run a tight ship doesn't necessarily mean you are best suited to run a classroom. The the audience is a little different, and that doesn't say that you couldn't do one both or both equally well, but to just say across the board this gonna work um because it has to work, to me the alternative is look at the root cause of why you don't have appropriate staffing instead of you trying to swap these pieces out like they're interchangeable parts of our society. Have a culture where people actually gonna want to move their ass to Florida and teach.
I mean, we're speaking on Florida on that in general, but keep in mind there's teacher shortages all across the country, including Chicago, and even at least as a month ago here in Indianapolis too. So it's not necessarily about locale. I think just in general, there's a teacher shortage in the country. Not to say every district and every city is like that, but you're going to get that. Now, if I'm going to teach anywhere in general, yeah, you probably want to go to Florida and do it because if you want to live in that lifestyle and that environment, yeah, go do it in Florida. Now, obviously, cost of living is going to come into play as well, which also could be a reason why some cities have their shortages because teachers, as we all know, don't get paid a whole lot. And if you live in the city of Chicago or LA, New York, what have you, those teacher dollars probably don't go as far as people think. So now, obviously, you don't have to live in Chicago. Well, I don't know. I'm not sure if it's required for you to live in Chicago to be a teacher in Chicago. It may be, but either way, even if you're in the suburbs, it's not cheap to live in Chicago. Great city, best in the world, but it's going to cost to live there. So maybe that's part of it too. When it comes to not just Chicago, even here in Indy, any city you want to name, maybe just people don't have the desire to be teachers as much as they used to. It's not as a respected position as much as anymore. It's almost kind of like I've said this before. Like many people don't want to work like fast food jobs because they don't want to deal with the people, like customers and stuff like that. I have to imagine a lot of times people don't want to deal with their customers, i.e., parents or kids, because how many parents out there? Not every parent, but how many parents do you know, Terrence, or have you seen or heard about that they'll blame the teacher for why their kid's messing up in school as opposed to looking at their kid?
I mean, where would they
And
pick
if I'm
that
not
up other than
right,
from admins like the governor, the wonderful state of Florida? Um, I just want to interject for a moment since we mentioned pay. And I'm referencing an article from the National Education Association, by the way, just to show you that we actually do research here on Cal Park Bros. Average
research.
teacher average teacher salary in Illinois 70,705. That's makes us number 13 in the nation. Just
Okay,
since we're just we've mentioned Illinois and Florida on this segment.
okay. Give me
Average teacher salary in Florida 51,009. 48th in the nation.
that's my point exactly. So yeah, now obviously where you live in Florida is going to vary, obviously, and your cost of living is going to vary as well. But from what I understand from people who live there, I think both know people who are looking to move there or have moved there. That living in Florida is not cheap. Not to say it's like living in New York or anything, but it ain't cheap. You want to live in pseudo paradise, you're going to have to pay for it. And that 51,000, granted, is above the average minimum median salary in this country, I do believe. But if you're in a single person or single income household, that's not a whole lot of money. And to be honest with you, 70 grand also is not inexpensive. Not it's not a minimal amount of money. It's a pretty good salary. How far does that go in Chicago? Now I don't expect you to answer that question, but if you're anybody who lives in Chicago or has looked into buying or renting property in Chicago, how far is that 70 grand going to take you? Not as far as it would here in Indy, or not as far as it would down in Alton, Illinois. Shout out to the Redbirds listening to us right now on the show. So, but to be honest with you, that number you said about Chicago does surprise me. I didn't think it would be that high, to be quite honest with you.
Yeah, but that's all Illinois though.
Well, no, that's fair. That's very fair. That is even though we know Chicago is Illinois, and that's all that really matters. But yeah, I said it. What y'all going to do? I said it. What? But but at the same time, though, I know there's some districts that are in not Chicago, i.e., Southern Illinois, to where the teachers aren't making anywhere near that either. So yeah, it's all Illinois, but I think that average is probably raised up by places not necessarily in Chicago, but places probably on the northern half of the state at the very least.
Yeah. All I'm going to say is, because my bigger issue is you can put as much lipstick on that pig if you want, if you're running, state government. But until you address the core issue, which is frankly your salary is substandard, your amenities are substandard, and since you love to just you know pick people from one industry and try and pluck them in this other industry, well, hell, these people may just find another industry that actually appreciates them. And this is my last bit on it, really. you know, I hope that military personnel that get into this, maybe they'll find their calling. They say, you know what, I love this line of work. I want to actually be a teacher now. That's great. Um, but until you address the real root of that issue, your school system is still fucked.
Listen, I know people are going to be hating on it, but I really don't see any. I really don't see any negatives to them bringing in people from outside the teaching industry temporarily, at least, if that is the end game. Because I know even with the teacher shortages in Chicago, according to articles I'm reading from ABC 7 News, NBC News Chicago, they're all saying that yes, there's a shortage, but they're still hiring people as of right now. So they're trying to fix the problem for this year. Maybe too late to still be doing that, but they're still doing it. So the military thing could be a temporary solution. If they're still trying to fix the problem, that's great. So I think people need to relax. I haven't said this in a while, but I'm bringing it back. People need to sit down, relax, take a sip of their beer. It'll be okay.
Yeah, you can take a sip of your beer as long as you're not about to teach class in 10 minutes.
Well, I mean after class.
So, yeah, that's really all I have to say on it. Think broader and longer term solutions, because this ain't it.
Yes, always think broader and longer.
All right. Hey. That concludes our first segment on back to school. Coming up in segment 2, we're going to be talking about Deshaun Quagmire Watson. Coming up next on Cal Park Bros.